Welcome to CAS 101, the most basic use of a CAS calculator. Just looking over your basic operations, how to create a fraction, indices, things like that. So what we do is we start by pressing our on button. As you can see, these numbers on the left-hand side on my handheld or my keypad will highlight in red when I'm pressing the buttons. I'll try and avoid doing shortcuts. So I'll keep pressing these, there we go, on. And on my main screen, I've got some options. Now, in order to use a calculator, I need to keep it as option A, calculate. And I'm going to select a new document. At the moment, we don't need the rest of them. We can go into those in a different video. So new. I've been playing around. I don't want to save anything I've got there. And I've got a new list. So in this list, I've got a calculator. I've got some geometry, graphs, spreadsheets, data. Now, lists and spreadsheets and data we're going to look at in a later video, but today we're touching base with the calculator. So basic operations, if I wanted to add something together, I'd use the keypad in the middle and I'd press 5 plus 3 and then I'd press the enter button and I'd end up with the number 8. 5 plus 3 is 8. It was when I went to school. Then I'm going to use the subtraction. So 5 minus 3 gives me 2. Let's move the cursor out of the way. Come on, cursor. Better. So 5 minus 3 equals 2. Let's try 5 times 3 gives us 15. And I'm going to keep it as a whole number. So I'm going to go 6 divided by 3. And I know that 6 divided by 3 equals 2. Now it's actually given me this 6 divided by 3 over here as a fraction. It still means divided by, but it's a fraction. Now if you want to create a fraction, you can do it one of two ways. You can press the number here. So we've got it on the right hand side, we've got a book, and next to the book we've got a list of options. So we've got fractions, indices, roots, matrices, modulars, a lot of things you won't experience, but in this case we're looking at fractions. So if I click that very first one, it's got a box, a line in a box, and that'll give me a fraction. If I want to type in, think of a number, let's go 1 over 2. I type in the number 1, then I use my down arrow over here on this keypad up the top. So down, and then the number 2, and I press enter. 1 divided by 2, or a half. I get exactly the same answer. In order to convert this from fraction into decimal, I need to use my control button on the left-hand side. So I've got a blue button called control. We're going to use him quite a few times. So if I press control, then I press my enter button, it converts from fraction to decimal. Let's try something else. Let's go another fraction, 3/5. 3 over 5, enter, control, enter, and I get 0.6. Perfect. So far we can do basic operations, we can input a fraction, and we can convert from fractions to decimals. Now there are shortcuts. If you can't be bothered finding the fraction button and whatnot, I'm going to show you. If you press control, divided, you get a fraction button. Just above, there's a little blue font, and that's got a fraction symbol. That's how we would determine what the shortcut is. So I'm just going to delete that. I'm going to show you how to do powers. Now we know that 2 times 2 equals 4. But what about 2 to the power of 2? I can press 2, and on the left-hand side I've got an x to the 2. Gives me 2 squared, press enter, I end up with 2 squared, which is 4. What if we're moving away from squared into cubed, into quad, etc.? Same concept, 2, but instead of using that x squared, I use the guy on the left with that little hat, and that gives me my indice. Type in 4 and press enter. All right, so a couple of basic operations. Now we're moving on to recursion and with algebraic and geometric sequences. So if you have the number 5 and you wanted to store that as your first number, you would press enter. Then, for example, if the pattern or the recursion that you had increased by 2, you would then type in the number plus 2. You'll notice that it says answer plus 2, and you press enter. So we start off with 5 and we add 2 and we get 7. If we press enter again, I haven't pressed any other buttons. It automatically takes the previous response or the previous answer, in this case 7, and then adds another 2 to get 9. If I press enter again, it takes the previous answer, being 9, and adds another 2. Now with a sequence, you have a starting number, and then you have, in an arithmetic sequence, you have a constant that it increases by. So the example that I've put on the board, I believe, was the number 2. So we type in 2 and then enter. Then we press plus 3, enter. So I get 5, and then I add another 3, add another 3, add another 3. Keep going. So if I said I want the 10th term, I can scroll back and forth here. So 2 is my first, then 5, 8 is my third, 11, 14 is my 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th. I press enter one more time, 10th. So if you get a question at any point, it says find the 10th number. You can just press your initial term and then keep pressing plus your constant and then enter and enter and enter and enter, and it continues through. You don't actually have to put in any more values. What if our constant was negative? So I've got the number, let's start with the number 80. Now if I take 10, I know that I'm going to get to 70. So let's type in subtract 10 and press enter. I get 70. If I press enter again, it takes that 70 and subtracts another 10 to get to 60. Down to 50, down to 40, down to 30, down to 20, 10, and 0. Not once have I had to press any other button bar the enter button. The ease of arithmetic sequences is that you type in your initial number, you press your plus or minus, and then your constant. Only downfall is you have to sit there and count every single time. For example, if you need the 50th term, you sit there and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and count up to 50 numbers. Now we're moving on to geometric sequences. So the difference between arithmetic and geometric is one's plus or minus, one is multiplied and divided by. With a geometric sequence, I'm going to start with the number 3 and I press enter. Now instead of adding or subtracting, I'm timesing. So I'm going to times by the number 2 and press enter. If I press enter again, it takes that number 6 and multiplies it by 2 to get 12. Enter again. 12 times 2 gives me 24. And so on and so forth up to 96 times 2 giving me 192. There's no end point for this. You just continue to press enter as many times as you needed to. What if it was divided by? Or what if the value you got given was a half? Let's start with this 3072 because we know what number we're going to end up with. 3072. And I'm going to press enter. That's my new starting value. Now I'm going to divide by 2. Divide by 2. Divide by 2. Divide by 2. Oh, I went a little bit too far. Very much too far. That's all right. So what I've done is instead of multiplying, I've divided by. So there's really no difference between the 4. It's just remembering which operation you need to use.